is Angela Acosta. I've been the health educator and coordinator for the peer health educators for Cal Maritime for 5 years. And today we are doing a senior spotlight on Matt Vanegas. He will be leaving us and graduating the end of fall 2020. I've had the pleasure of working with him for 2 years as one of our peer health educators. And today we're going to talk about his time at Cal Maritime. We also have some other co-hosts here if we can go around and they can introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, Ryan Rodriguez here, one of the career coordinators on campus and one of the co-hosts on the Resiliency Project podcast.
Hello, I'm Andre Jang. I'm one of the new Resiliency Peers on campus, and I'm a mechanical engineering license major.
Okay, I'm Angelica Matos, also known as AJ. I'm a peer health educator and a senior global studies major on campus.
All right. So let's start by sharing your story, Matt. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
Let's start with your journey at Cal Maritime. Could you share your background, why you chose Cal Maritime? What major and minor will you be graduating with?
All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Matthew Vanegas. I'm a graduating senior, as you already know, and going to be graduating with Global Studies in Maritime Affairs degree. I'm going to be graduating a semester earlier. It was just more through, personal choices and how I wanted to just kind of get into the working world and get into the world a little bit faster. I know that's kind of it may go against what, like, not necessarily the tradition of what people do, but I didn't really think of it as that way. I always kind of saw it to try to just get a head start in life in a way. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I don't really know much anywhere else outside of that. I spent the majority of my life in the downtown area, like downtown LA area, in a little neighborhood called Elysian Valley. It's a I'm Latino. It's a predominantly Latino area, so I had a very interesting. I would call it interesting to have an upbringing in a area that is been going through many different changes throughout its history as of recently. With housing prices are changing and the kind of background that's going on in that area in certain parts of LA are changing demographically. So being able to see that from a young perspective and kind of growing up into that, you sort of uh, have a nuanced perspective on what it means on what certain topics such as gentrification and what just essential the cycle of progress and the times and future and what that kind of really means as a person, to me at least. Truthfully, when I went to Cal Maritime, I wasn't really the best student in high school. I was very I don't really know how to describe it without being frank, but I didn't really have the best grades. I wasn't really the most focused student. I kind of really took everything for granted. Uh, when I graduated high school, I had about a 2.4 GPA. I did not really apply myself. I didn't really think much of my future. And Cal Maritime was one of the only schools that accepted me in a way. It was either that or Cal State Fullerton, and I decided I wanted to get away from LA. I wanted to try to change in a way. I wanted to see what else was out there, see what else was out of LA, and I didn't want to fall. I didn't want to fall into many pitfalls that I saw my friends and family go through by staying. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, of course. People can thrive and excel, by staying in their hometown, going to college in their hometown, and that's fine. That's It's not what I'm saying at all. Just I saw that I wanted to try something different. I wanted to take a chance with going out into the world and doing something different. I was the only person in my school, the only person that I really knew that went to Cal Maritime and went to the Bay Area in general. And from then on, I began to learn some really important lessons about the real world, about self responsibility, and how to essentially conduct yourself around other people, around your job obligations. So yeah, that's a little bit about my background, how I got here, and how things have kind of came to be in a way.
So, you are studying global studies and maritime affairs. Could you explain it more to our listeners who may not be familiar with that major and why you chose that program?
One of the best ways that I like to describe the major to people that don't necessarily, that may never have heard of it, that may not know what it is. I like to kind of simplify it as a political science degree, but with a maritime twist on it. And that may not necessarily be the most accurate terms to describe it. Um, in my experience, the past 4 years, we focused on a lot of subjects that kind of deal, as the name implies, deal with with a global perspective in terms of policies, maritime history, maritime law, centered in the U.S., but the curriculum does take a look into other countries, other socioeconomic situations around the world. I'll never forget one of my most favorite classes, and taught by one of my most favorite professors. His name's Professor Ryan Wade. He's I think the chair, I believe, of the studies department, and he kind of made me fall in love with global studies. He made me fall in love with the idea of international politics, international relations with other countries, and on a political level, on a policy level, and if you ever consider to stay in global studies, you'll be learning a lot of policy-centric classes, policy-centric ideas on how society works in a way in government. And I never really understood what it meant to be a policymaker. I didn't understand what these greater topics, what these large concepts of laws and theories and basically to conduct or regulate people's behaviors, citizens' activities, um, whether that be at the societal level from laws prohibiting the uh, use of certain like practices for technology or for carbon emissions. Basically, just learning how the global intricacies of the world work, and that's kind of like the big takeaway that I got from this major is to kind of look at your position in the world and kind of understand the global aspect of it, that we are one person and that this is a giant world. And I think a lot of people don't really take that into perspective, and by taking this class, in a very relevant class, especially in a globalized society that we're in right now, it really does add another layer of perspective, especially when you view global politics, foreign policy, and you try to interpret situations that the world is facing currently. So that's kind of my big takeaway on the major, essentially.
Cool. Well, okay. So now, Matt, we're gonna dive a little bit into your past, and we want you to describe one of the harder experiences you've had. Can be in high school, can be in college, and how'd you overcome that?
Okay. One of the biggest challenges that I remember, that I felt that I experienced was the idea of a culture shock in a way. It's kind of a loose term that I want to use to describe just kind of going into the world head first, or kind of leaving your previous presumptions and ideas of what you knew before, and then going into college and experiencing things totally new. Um, and then in that scape. And to provide an example is that when I went to high school and when I went to elementary school, I was a predominantly Latino school. I went to high school at Don Bosco Technical Institute, and that was an all boys Catholic school. So it was very different. At elementary school, it was kind of a similar situation. I went to Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal Elementary School. It was another Catholic elementary school. So I guess being in that Hispanic Catholic upbringing that I've kind of been ingrained and learned throughout my life, it sort of laid a foundation for me on how to conduct myself, on how to kind of discern a moral compass of sorts, and kind of discern to kind of guide my actions in a way. And it it was interesting in a sense because uh, I was kind of in this echo chamber, so to speak. I was in this world where I thought that everybody was Catholic. I thought everybody had the same values as me. I thought everybody wanted to like do other, just do things and be generous and be kind to me. But I didn't take away the idea that I didn't realize the fact that I was a little kid, I was a minor. I was barely 18, barely an adult. And it was kind of a naive way to look at things now in retrospect. Because when I went into college and I started going out and making friends and realizing that the home that I knew and being nurtured and being raised was different from going to college and at times trying to face challenges of not necessarily having people understand me, so to speak. And I didn't really see that as a major issue. I kind of thought of it as, wow, not everybody believes the same thing that I believe in. Not everybody is going to agree with what you have to say, and you need to conduct yourself accordingly on how you're going to handle that, on how you're going to handle different opinions. And I don't want to say that loneliness was a big issue because I wanted to focus on school. I wanted to try to there were times where there were a lot of opportunities to like go out and party and go out and do fun things, but I always ended up staying indoors in dorms a lot of the time, truthfully, to focus on homework because I kind of procrastinated. I never really got down that I never really perfected that work hard play hard mentality. It was for me it was kind of more like play hard and do what you want to do, and then the deadline comes a day before, so you're going to cram. I had that procrastinator lifestyle. I still do, and it's kind of a tough. It's a tough thing to break. It's a tough cycle. It's a very tough habit, and I feel like I could have changed. I feel like I could have gotten a little bit better in managing my time and managing my priorities, but um, in the end, it's all been experience, and I think that those were some of the big challenges that I had to face, essentially, overcoming previous presumptions and building up them. I think that's overall the biggest challenges people overcome.
That sounds like quite the experience.
So, what as experienced a peer health educator, what were some experiences you've gained from that position?
One of the big takeaways that I got from being a peer health educator was realizing the importance of spreading information, realizing the importance of sharing information and conducting oneself in a manner that is beneficial and for the well-being and welfare of the student body. Um, I think one of my most cherished moments with being a peer health educator were the times where we organized fluffy Saturday. Well, not my bad, fluffy therapy. We'd organize fluffy therapy events. That entailed setting up the multi-purpose room, uh, and accommodating the pet owners, chatting and communicating with the therapy dog owners, and making a smooth system or layout for people to kind of walk around. And those days really struck me as a very fun experience because um, it was the idea of raising awareness that of students that may or may not have really knew of the event through their own through not really knowing or through this, that, or other factors. Just seeing the happiness, seeing the stress almost literally fly from them because there's as you may already know at Cal Maritime, it can be rigorous, it can be challenging at times, maybe more so than in other schools, given our different requirements for uniforms and being voluntold to do watch standing or maintaining the ship. These are things that make Cal Maritime unique in a way, and things that other schools I feel don't necessarily focus on, outside of other maritime academies and stuff, but those are pretty rare in and of themselves. So fluffy therapy was a very big takeaway in a way because you not only learned you not only developed communication skills, multitasking, like multiple factors, essentially multiple challenges, all the while keeping a deadline, keeping a schedule of sorts, and maintaining responsibility and cleaning up after yourself. So that event was one of my big takeaways, that because it kind of exemplified all the skills that I just mentioned.
And you mentioned a lot of like turmoil and just ups and downs. So, what would you say was like your best experience or like a best day at Cal Maritime, if you had to choose a day, a specific day?
Uh, it did have to do with it did have to do a little bit with fluffy therapy as well. But one of my most favorite moments on Cal Maritime was it was actually last year. The school had just instated Alleyway Thursdays. Now, for those people that don't really know what Alleyway Thursdays were, it's kind of like the spiritual successor to Thirsty Thursdays, the lounge that used to be at Morrow Cove. I view it as like the spiritual successor in the way that people, if you didn't want to go to the dining center, if you didn't want to eat at Morrow Cove, you could go to this alleyway where people would have live music, they'd have bands, you could do karaoke, there were chefs that were doing their own meals, and sometimes you'd have just a lively event, and well, not sometimes, all the time, quite frankly. They sold alcohol, but that's besides the issue. That's besides the point. Um, and they only reserved you to 2 beers, which I kind of disagreed, but that's besides the point. But sometimes, so to speak, the stars would align, and we'd have fluffy therapy and alleyway Thursdays aligning on the same days. And if you kind of know the geography of the school, the student union, multi-purpose room, and alleyway Thursdays are right in the same area of each other. They're very close walking distance. So there would be times where you'd be with your classes, your evening classes. Dinner would be going on. Dinner would be served in the big dining hall. Alleyway Thursdays was occurring, in the basketball Keel Holler store alleyway. Fluffy therapy would be occurring at the student union. So it was just this big congregation of everybody doing different things, just being together. The live music kind of set the tone. You hear the barking in the distance. You see people lying down and petting dogs. People and people going to eat and congregate over there. And congregate at the dining center. So it was. I think that in and of itself made me realize that this is what Cal Maritime is about. This is the community that everybody talked about. This is the community that I'm trying to illustrate. That although the school is rigorous, although there are different challenges that the school faces in and of itself, you can at least know and take solace in realizing that the school has certain ways, has certain options to bring you out of your comfort zone or relieve stress. And I think it all meshed well perfectly. And I'll never forget those moments.
Okay, so let's talk about your present and future. What are you currently up to, and what are your plans after graduation?
Well, as of right now, I'm going to be raising money to uh, purchase this course, so to speak. It's called Blueprint. Okay, well, first of all, I want to go into law school. And to get into law school, it requires you to take this test called the Law School Admissions Test. And the law school admissions test is scary, to say the least, because the way how law school admissions measure this test is that they measure it more so, it's weighed more in terms of importance than your actual GPA on campus. So you could spend 4 years on campus, but the LSAT score outweighs that. So it's very scary, in my opinion, at least. But I don't want to make it seem like it's impossible. It's basically this test determines a score, and that score, essentially helps determine your chances to get into law school. So Starting this January 10th, I'm going to be studying for about 3 months for the upcoming law school, the upcoming LSAT test, which is going to be, or it's called LSAT Quick or something like that, LSAT Fast, because it's all online now because of stay-at-home restrictions. So that's kind of my short-term goal right now, to just start studying for the LSAT after I graduate, and then after February, after April, just start applying to law schools, and then see what happens. So that's kind of like the medium term goals right now.
Okay, what's some advice you have for underclassmen?
Okay. I think the biggest advice that I'd give is give it a chance. And what I mean by that is there are going to be times where the rigors of having to wear uniforms, having to maintain a schedule, having to abide by the cadets, having to be voluntold to sometimes wake up at 4 in the morning and stand in a watch box, or have mere shifts if you're on the mere weekend shifts if you're a licensed track major. All that I feel will pay off, and in a way it has. There's certain skills that I've learned from Cal Maritime that I don't necessarily know if I'd learned from other schools. Um, for example, the idea of, although minimal to some perspective, I guess, although minimal compared to other academies, there's the fact that it's still a Cal State. You still have the lax regulations on uniforms. You don't necessarily have to starch and press your uniform every morning, but that's not the point. Waking up at 7 in the morning helped me develop a sense of discipline within myself that I didn't have when I was in high school. Level of self-control and conservatism, but not in a political way, but just to sort of multitask and handle my tasks, and all the while understand my other responsibilities. This school gave me a very strong sense of responsibility in the fact that not only do I have to maintain my appearance, to maintain my clothes, I have to maintain my grades with classes, because at the end of the day, it is ultimately up to you. And I don't necessarily think other schools kind of instill these other tasks of responsibility at the same way that Cal Maritime does. And it really will pay off in the long run. Also, one other advice that I would say to students is, I kind of thought I was a know-it-all when I was in high school. Homework was super easy. I did it without any issues, even though I really didn't respect it, and therefore my GPA in high school reflected that. So one thing that I recommend students to do, underclassmen, if you can't do clubs, if you can't do sports, like how I did, like my problem, I didn't do sports, I didn't join any real clubs, find a job. Go out into the real world and try to build yourself a resume, build yourself up, understand what the real world entails. When I was there was rarely a time at school where I didn't work. I started off working at the dining center, working 20 hours a month because that was the requirement. That was the rate. That was what they let you do a month. And then I told myself, okay, I don't want to serve food, and some people don't like serving food. So I ended up doing security at the Contemporary Services Corporations. It's this security company that's prevalent in the Bay Area. So I ended up traveling a lot in the Bay Area in my spare time. Went to the Oracle Arena. I got to see the Warriors games. I got to see Elton John perform. I got to see Childish Gambino. I got to see B2K, which is this old 90s rap band I didn't even know exist. I got to go to the Giants Stadium, and that was just with this one company. So, and then I ended up working at Pier 80, which was being a Teamster, and I was, through the connections that I made with my friends and companies, I was driving Tesla cars at Pier 80. Like, it was an experience that I don't think I would have ever had if I'd stayed in high school, or if I'd stayed in Los Angeles and I stayed in my little circle. So take a chance. Just, if the going gets tough, remember what it's for. It's ultimately going to make you a stronger person at the end of it, and you're going to develop skills and resolve that you may or may not necessarily experience if you're back, if you're in your hometown, if you're at home, if you're with people that may not necessarily challenge you. And I encourage everybody to try to take challenges. I encourage everybody to try to take things that are uncomfortable, because at the end of the day, that uncomfortability, those challenges, that pain, it's going to ultimately toughen you up, and it's going to develop you into a different person, but it's going to make you stronger at the end. So that's kind of the big goal. That's kind of the big takeaway. Just give it a chance, take chances responsibly, of course, but just if the opportunity presents itself, I think it would be better to take that chance. You never know what's going to happen.
Okay, so let's end this podcast with a lightning round. Are you ready, Matt?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. First question. What was the most fun thing you did during the pandemic?
Every Saturday with my family, we have these paint parties. Now, it's through my mom's Facebook. There's this personality called Moya Arts Institute, and he goes through these events, kind of streams live, and he paints themes for the holiday paintings, holiday characters. In the last couple of weeks, I painted a Grinch overlooking a snowy landscape. He does a lot of Latino and Hispanic based themes. I have a few right now. Actually, this is my mom's painting of Frida Kahlo. Um, you can tell by the eyebrow, the unibrow, and the flowers. Uh, because it's thematic this upcoming Christmas. We recently painted a Jack Skellington holiday theme. It's nice. I'm not necessarily a good painter, but I'm a little self-conscious about it, actually. But he's able to make you feel confident and give you a sort of level to just go with the flow. To quote him pretty seamlessly, he says, "Don't stress and do your best." That's Maya Arts Institute.
Actually, I think that's good advice even for non-art. Don't stress. Do your best. All right. Second question: what are you looking forward to most after graduation?
What am I looking forward to most? I'm really looking forward to I'm looking forward to the small break of not stressing over finals and not stressing over this this senior thesis that I got to do. Um, it's the final week. If you're reading this, it's due in about 5 days from now, at the day of this recording, and it's stressful to say the least. And I'm definitely looking forward to getting that over with, and just no longer having to deal with everything that comes with that. So I think that's the most immediate response.
So to sum up your time at Cal Maritime, how would you describe it in one word?
Hmm. Mm, fast paced, very fast paced.
And then for your final, to recap everything, what would you try to leave off as like a wise quote or some important lesson you learned at Cal Maritime?
Mm, it gets better near the end. Honestly.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay, so what class did you enjoy the most at Cal Maritime?
I don't know if this is necessarily a class, because yeah, I think it is. It's got to be hands down the international experience, hands down without a doubt. If we're talking like in class and semester classes, then I would say um, foreign policy. Although it was one of the more rigorous upper divisional classes, it kind of really took a really serious look into like diplomacy, international relations, um, terms that are honestly frequently used in the real world, like non-state actors and you know um, stateless vessels and piracy, and these are really big topics, especially that's been kind of going on in the news recently. But it really does kind of bring that down to a relatable and understandable level in the world. But go back to the international experience. It's a requirement taken by business and global studies students, where you go to a country of your choosing or whatever's provided. Last year, I believe it was last year, yeah, last summer, we ended up going to Vietnam, and that was a very, very special event. That was a very, very special experience. I think the name of it doesn't necessarily do it justice, because it's such a multifaceted experience from, going out to staying in the U.S., you're going to a different country, a different environment, a different culture. Really kind of plays into the theme that I was trying to say about going out and experiencing new things. So those two kind of have a special place in my heart.
What's your favorite Thanksgiving food?
Cranberry sauce. I could eat the whole can. It's kind of, I know, I see you, Ryan. I know it's the
No,
popular
no.
opinion. I could eat the whole can, man. I love cranberry sauce. Yeah, it's yummy. It's really nice.
Shoot, if you were at my Thanksgiving, you could have the whole bowl if you asked me. That would not. I'm not touching that at all. Too tart, unless it's cranberry and vodka. Maybe that's it. Nothing else. No cranberry for
Oh,
me.
yeah. I don't know what it is. There's just something about it. I think I drank it. I used to drink cranberry juice every day, before high school. I think I kind of got that conditioning. So it's like I have that weird taste for it, but undoubtedly cranberry sauce.
Okay, so we talked a lot about Cal Maritime. We talked about your best experience. What might have been your worst experience at Cal Maritime?
Oh, that's easy. That's very easy. It was freshman year, and I believe it was international relations. AJ, I don't know if you were in that class with me, but it was the first test we'd ever taken with Professor Wade, and people bombed that test. I remember correctly. I got a 67 in that first test, and I know it doesn't necessarily sound much initially right now. It was it's a bad grade. I didn't study. I didn't apply myself. I kind of underestimated what Dr. Wade wanted, but a lot of kids in that class did equally, if not worse, and it moved Professor Wade so much. Following class day, he ended up going to the Dollar Tree, and he purchased $20 worth of single subject notebooks. I think I still have mine right here. Um, oh my goodness. He came to class saying, "I am so shocked. I did not realize this was going to be this way." And he brought the bag, and he set this bag on the desk. He had 20 single subject notebooks and started handing it out to everybody. This is your guys' notes. And I'm sitting there thinking, "Oh my goodness. I never in my entire life had I ever heard of a professor handing out notebooks to his students just because of how bad they did on a test." I felt embarrassed. I felt just overall shocked that he did that. And it really did motivate me to want to do better and to not want to disappoint this guy. So definitely a low point in my time at Cal Maritime to have a professor purchase a notebook for me because we had underperformed to such a crazy level.
Okay, so my favorite question is, what was your favorite city to visit in Vietnam and why?
Okay. I'm not gonna lie, it had to be Hanoi because I guess because I'm younger, I kind of like the danger. I like more risky behavior, and there was just something about knowing that you're being listened to in ways that you don't understand, like in ways that you didn't really realize. It kind of added a level of like shock and difference because in the U.S. people like to have the First Amendment. You can talk whatever you want as long as it's not hateful or hurtful speech, right? Just that certain caveat. But in Vietnam, it's different. If you talk against the government, if you say seditious things against the government, there are individuals in the country where they have secret police dressed as citizens. You know, in Vietnam, you can't congregate in people in groups more than 7 to 14. I don't remember exactly what the number was, but you can't congregate in groups number larger than a certain number that they want. Otherwise, they start to break up those groups. There have been instances where people have spoken out quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Quite rambunctiously about the government, and they get cited. They get cited and fined by these undercover police for speaking your mind. So it was definitely a shock, and it was very it added not necessarily an eerie level, but an exciting level because I just didn't know. I didn't know who was listening at the time. I didn't know what was okay to say. So it was unfortunate. I kept my mouth shut in certain situations, but Hanoi was interesting for that in and of itself. But the fact that it's different, it's more kind of like the home, home to the capital. Ho Chi Minh is buried there. You get to see a lot of communist and pro-government like propaganda, bits about their culture. So more so than in um, uh, I'm sorry, the southern city, Saigon, or Ho Chi Minh City, as they like to call it. Um, Ho Chi Minh City has another place in my heart, but I liked Hanoi because it was more. You could definitely tell the difference. You could definitely tell the difference in like culture and kind of presence of the government, which although it might be a little weird to say, but culturally that was very different. It's very interesting to say the least. So I say Hanoi. I liked it a lot for those things about it.
Well, I'm going to say that wraps up our lightning round of questions. Matt, thank you so much for flipping from a host to a guest and being on the Senior Spotlight for the podcast. I think I can speak for everyone that we definitely enjoyed listening to your experiences and definitely wish you the best of luck after December as you move on to the LSAT. And we're excited to see what the next chapter of life holds for you. So thanks for stopping by.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you again.